welcome to episode number 30. What is it? 39?
49.
Oh 49 of the Eavesdrop podcast. We did. I worked so hard, Chris. You wouldn't know
why. It never works.
So
you have time to fit us in, you can't work.
Okay, so just so we remember, okay, you guys are from England. A lot of our viewers are from the United States of America. So get your mic closer to you and make sure that you talk into it because the accents
talk slowly.
Are a little bit thick.
Right.
Yeah, especially
as soon as we start speaking normally, that's just going to go out the window.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I can't promise that.
So I want to start this podcast by saying thank you for stopping by. This is the first time you guys at the Hecz quarters. If any of you leave here without taking a picture on that wall, that means that Matt didn't do his job and he's going to get fired. So you guys are going to be responsible for firing him again because you guys fired him and sent him my way.
How's he been?
How's he been?
Good.
Yeah.
But I mean,
well, he's got dog hair all over the mics, as we pointed out.
And he admitted to it. No, the thing about Matt is that he's really, really good, but sometimes he's forgetful, like any 22-year-old would be. And I dig in. I don't let that happen. You know, if something the tiniest little bit of thing, I'm like, God damn it, Matt. I'll sit him down, have a talk with him, and yeah.
The thing that I always liked about Matt, which is why I thought he'd be ideal for you, is he doesn't really get overawed by meeting people who've got a bit of profile in the scene. Mm-hmm. You know, there's some people who they turn up and they meet people like you and they're like, whoa, yeah, it's Hector over there, and I'm like, just act normal, mate.
Well, sort of. One of the first things I'm like, listen, Matt, we're gonna do these podcasts with famous people. You can get your picture if you want, but don't fucking embarrass me.
Okay. And he has.
I'm not a fan of getting the pictures of celebrities.
No,
I don't get it.
I always think
I just
weird.
got tricked.
No.
I just got tricked by went to the KSI fight, as you guys can see back there. Went to the KSI fight.
They hired by Ed Sheeran.
They hired a fake Ed Sheeran.
Yeah, we did not
I don't listen
that.
to Ed Sheeran. I know who he is, obviously, because he's that big of a superstar. My wife does. My wife and a friend of ours went to the concert, so I know what the dude looks like. So when I saw it, I saw an opportunity for me, you know, to look cool in front of my girl. So I'm like, I'm gonna do it, and my daughter obviously too. And I'm like, Haley, Matt, Nate Shutt's girlfriend. I'm like, Haley, please take a picture of me. And Matt's like, no, man, no, don't do it. You're gonna seem like a fanboy. And I'm like, I don't care. I've done way dumber stuff to try to impress Jude. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, this is not even close to that. So I show up, and I'm like, hey man, do you mind if I take a picture? He was like vaping. I'm like, that's weird. You know, I thought he would smoke. He's a goddamn rock star, right? Is that his genre, rock?
He's not a rock star.
No,
he's
just like a pop star,
he's a pop star, isn't he?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a pop star, isn't he? And then anyway, so I'm like, do you mind if I picture? He's like, yeah. So nobody was around, and I'm like, and as I'm taking the picture, I'm like, man, my wife's not gonna believe this. And then I took the picture. And then I left, and everyone, as I'm walking back, everyone's laughing at me, and I'm like, what?
There's no way people knew there. There's no way because he fooled everyone. Like if you watch the video the guy uploaded, and actually he used to look way more like Ed Sheeran in the past. There's some older pictures where he looks identical, but I actually thought it was him as well because I'd seen it in some. I think Bradley Martin had gone around asking people for predictions, and I was like, is that Ed Sheeran? It kind of looks like him. Yeah. So
does he work professionally as like
yeah,
a
it's his job. He's a professional lookalike. So this YouTuber, I can't remember, some South African guy, I can't remember his name, flew him out, and then he went around and took pictures with everyone, like even Keem, who apparently is the one that can spot a troll a mile away. He said that like he even like couldn't recognize, can't even speak anymore.
Yeah. I mean, Keem's is well known to be good.
You
at
actually sound the way that you write articles on the show.
Oh, here we go.
He doesn't write, does he?
Obviously,
we're taking his keyboard away.
The thing about getting like photos with celebrities is that the first thing you do is like you show your mates as if the person you're getting, the celebrity you're getting a photo with, is your mate, and they're really not. Obviously, they don't care. You know what I mean? So
the last person I ever took a celebrity I took a picture with was at COD XP 2011, and it was FPS Russia. And for some reason, I've got a picture of him. Somewhere.
Well, he was the biggest thing. Anyway, really quickly, Chris Marsh from Decerto, Josh Nino. Is it Nino or Nino?
Nino, mate.
Nino.
Yeah.
And Mike Kent.
Got my name.
All right. No, okay. These are long time friends of mine. They started a company called Decerto way back then when it was an actual C. In Decerto, and it was a tournament website. Yeah. Wow. And we've always hit it off, I think. Maybe I talked shit to you once about not paying on time.
That's true.
Well, because they used to run Decerto always ran in the background. It was like a forum, and then we did like some tournaments on it, but it was mainly just a forum. And we also created like competitive rule sets for Call of Duty back in the day, because at the time there was no Activision involvement. There was not, and the only tournaments they ever didn't have any sort of rules. So we came up with a rule set that kind of took out all the crap, which is pretty much what the pro players do now with their gentleman's agreement.
Yeah.
And then on the side, or Decerto was just a hobby at the time.
Alleged gentlemen's agreements.
Yeah, sure. And then on the side, that was just like a part-time thing that I think I was the only one that was actually paid part-time. It was like $100 a month equivalent. And then these two worked for EGL, and then they were running tournaments on the side who used the Decerto rule set. And then I think that's how you ended up getting pissed with them, because they were using the...
It was crazy, because when EGL started, we were not there on day one, but we were there by about day two. And originally there was a bit of money in it and stuff, but the people who were involved at the start and making those decisions, especially financially, were just kind of, there was no budget or anything like that. They were just sort of like, how much should we spend on AV? Yeah, we'll commit to that. And then at a certain point, there became like a bit of a budget deficit. So it was almost, they were always trying to like get money off one person to pay the next person. And since we were like the public faces of it, I'd kind of be saying to you, Hector, like it was absolutely totally out of my hands, but I was basically looking at this money like, oh my God, we're not going to be able to pay this for a while. There's a VAT bill coming up or something like that. So I was having to kind of palm it off a little bit. And naturally you weren't loving it, because back in the day, £3,000-4,000 was actually quite a lot of money in esports, especially maybe
Which is
not
crazy,
so much
because
to
£3,000 or £5,000 now is like $10,000 here in the United States.
Well, no, it's not. It's like 6,000.
The Brexit hasn't happened just yet, mate. Yeah.
But so
we lost some friends, really, didn't we?
We did. There was a lot of
we were the
balance
punching bag, essentially, right? So obviously, the first person they come to is us, as if we're going to pick some money out of our asses, and we're not. So obviously, that's in a way that was kind of the beginning of the end for us.
But every tournament organizer did that though. Like I think almost
it's the
every
principle of the money, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just the amount of money.
A lot of the Call of Duty element of those tournaments was really built off a combination of our reputation and Decerto at the time. And so, we considered a lot of these players our friends. And so it was tough to turn around to these people who, they weren't doing this as a living, but, if you're an 18-year-old at £1,000, especially them, because people, I guess, a lot of people have come into the scene more recently. You get players who are earning six figures a year easily, whereas earning a few $100 was like a big win.
Yeah,
like
they go back to their parents and they say, look, what I'm doing is actually making me money. Can I carry on playing? That's why it was important.
And so to have to turn round to them and say, sorry, it's going to be even longer. And really, I often didn't know the answer of how long it was going to be.
The thing is, even with all the investment in esports, it still happens now. Like, all the casters were complaining about it recently. Like,
which casters?
Vince, on Fire Vince. He was tweeting out saying that he's like a British commentator for CSGO. And he was tweeting saying that he's not being paid for 6 months by this company. He put out this tweet, loads of people replied and said, no, this happens to us all the time. Tournament organisers are terrible at paying. And then, the next day you end up getting paid, coincidentally.
Yeah, well, it was always like the squeaky wheel gets the grease. If you spoke up, people want to silence you and, here's your money, hush, sort of thing. But
that's why you guys basically, obviously that's why you guys want to do Decerto full time, because
there's too much risk in events as well.
Yeah.
One thing goes wrong, and obviously the tournament is delayed by hours on end, and it's just not satisfying to run something that
as
is that
it happened many times.
I mean, one thing, like if you look back then, there was a period where
TCM would have never beat us if you guys were on time. Just know that.
Good. I'm glad that we're a part of that.
we could rejoice in that. But there was a period when Call of Duty was almost an intimidating scene to get into, even say for MLG, because the way it was being run, you couldn't just play it online. It had to be done through an internet connection, and that's just the norm now. But there was a period where that wasn't a thing, and I remember, that's why Optic were coming over to Europe, because there was no other tournaments, and we kind of took that risk, and I think we almost paved the way for people to say, actually, there is something here in Call of Duty. EGL 5, I think it was, we had 113 teams. For a long while, that held the record for the biggest Call of Duty tournament worldwide. And don't get me wrong, it was a shambles of an event, and having to play it over the internet and people get DDoSing us and stuff, and we were turning around to people mid-series saying, sorry, it's gone offline for the 50th time and all this stuff, but we kind of came through, and that's
part of the charm of it, though, right? I mean, obviously the fact that it was a really busy event, it was a reignation of Call of Duty.
Absolutely.
The fact that it was a little bit of a shambles was part of the charm, I think.
But also
people don't
part of the
remember
reason why we're glad to kind of be out of that game,
done.
because it was because your reputation staked on often factors that you just don't have any control over.
Don't get me wrong, that's not to say that there aren't, far more experienced event organisers out there who would know how to mitigate those kind of things.
Times have changed now. The quality of services involved is just massive compared to them when there was like 12 of us setting up. You'd be doing monitors. You'd be setting
how
up
long
all the
ago
consoles.
was that? I mean,
5 years.
5 years, like a lot.
A bit more.
No, that was back,
longer than that,
back in
fact.
20. When you were doing EGL.
Well, we did Decerto's
2012.
the event. Sorry, I thought you meant the end of
2013
EGL.
probably.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we started doing Decerto full time. So back to what you said before, Decerto with a C. It was just a forum part time. time. I left and started doing trying to get like a real career. I worked in I worked in banking and I worked in recruitment, and then I got a call from these guys saying, look, we've managed to get like a bit of investment. Do you want to come back and do Decerto full time? I was like, absolutely. And when we came back,
you
we
can
changed.
tell you made a good effort at his recruitment job. That's how quickly he left it, didn't it?
I was a beyond average recruiter.
You know what? Well, the thing was that made him quit. They wouldn't let him grow a beard.
Yeah,
and we agreed that he could have a beard.
Yeah, for some reason, the guy was like, the guy in charge of the office, he just said, you're not allowed to have facial hair. And I was like, what difference does that make to like how a person is as a recruitment person? Like,
would
why
you hire somebody with tattoos?
100%.
Yeah, come on.
Who couldn't give
You
a
would?
fuck?
Well,
Yeah.
the 21st
Could have
century.
tattoos on the face.
You got to be
for
super
all we
tolerant,
care.
intentionally these days. 'Cause obviously, otherwise,
A lot of people have
making
them
it
now.
or nothing.
Yeah. Well,
I don't care.
now-
Literally, people can wear whatever they want. They can tattoo whatever
I
they want
agree.
on the face.
They're all
So you're telling me that if you show up to a bank and the teller has tattoos all over their
Couldn't
face,
care less.
you're okay?
Don't care about it.
Why would we
They're
care
being
about
vetted on their credentials, not
Yeah.
on what they wear.
And look,
No, I'm with it.
I'm not
Yeah,
saying
you've got a
I'm
gun
not
on your hand, don't you? Unless you've inked that on today.
No.
That is shocking, mate.
I noticed before we started that you've got quite feminine hands, so I can see why you'd want to put a gun on there.
Yeah.
They are feminine hands there.
Not
aren't
a
they?
day of labor in these since 1996. The 1996 was the last time I carried a box for UPS and said, "This is not for me."
This
What was in that box? Just a pillow.
Probably-
and even
no,
then, you had
it was-
calluses for weeks.
So I'm gonna paint the picture for you, and I don't know if I talked about this in the podcast before, but there's I was a loader and unload. I was a loader at UPS. Are you guys familiar with UPS?
Yeah.
of course
Yeah.
it is.
I'm just kidding. So UPS, and there used to be like this massive belt. So the trailer would back into this sort of platform that had a belt that had rollers in it, and then it would like sort into it. And for 4 hours straight, you would grab a box and you would play Tetris, like from the back of the truck, from the front of the truck all the way to the back until it was filled to the brim. You would pause it and then get another truck in, right? And I'm out of high school, so I would walk out of high school and walk home while 3 of my friends and their girlfriends and other girls that were there, like super fun time there, they would take a ride to go to the pool. I would keep going straight, go to my house and go there, right? So no fun for me. But I would get there, and by the time I would get home, because of the amount of dirt that came on those boxes, I would have mud like dripping off of me, right? And it was Chicago, so in the summer it got super hot. I didn't make it into the winter, luckily. But it was so hot in there that you just would sweat and like sort of smear all the dirt. Anyway, it got so bad that one day I was sleeping. I used to sleep in the living room because we didn't have a big house or a big condo. So I slept in the living room, and one of the nights I wake up and then I like sort of wake up and slam my coffee table and knocked a whole bunch of shit down because I was in my dream I was trying to stop a box from knocking down all the other boxes. I was having nightmares about my job. So I'm like, I'm never doing this again. Put on a suit and tie, went to work at a bank. That's
When you were doing that, were you kind of just in the moment focused, like need to do this, or was it not so mind-numbingly boring that you were just kind of clock watching the whole time?
Dreaming about what could come next.
Yeah.
No, because it was like you had to be.
Did you have to be focused basically to do it?
Yeah, because if it was fragile, it would have to go on the top, so you have to put that on the side. If it was too big, you would put it for the next wall as the base of it.
Yeah,
so it was like this endless amount of like.
Say
bull
everything
crap.
had kicked
and you
off.
had to scan it with a finger scanner. Like,
Yeah.
Say everything had kicked off back then. Do you think you would have been as good as what you do now had it all started a bit earlier during those days at UPS?
yeah, 100%. I always say that if YouTube was a thing that was accessible to me in my high school year, I would have been way bigger and more successful.
Because a
than
lot
I
of
am today.
comedians, they say that, I'm not saying that all of them are, but their kind of careers come about a little bit later in their lives. And the reason why is because even though they could have started it younger, or maybe didn't have the confidence, they always say that they wouldn't have been as good at it because they were younger and they just weren't as experienced in some regard or another.
Not me. No.
Not me.
Humble.
Ever gone as
Well,
Tex, as he called him.
if you think about it, like younger people have faster reaction times, right? Like that's just a fact. I started playing video games when I
Oh,
was.
are you trying to
20.
say you were a good player?
Oh, I'm still.
We weren't talking about your
still
play,
a good
Greg.
player.
This is nothing about
Okay,
skill. I
I'm
still
a
don't believe
good
this to be
player.
true.
Okay, I'm still an excellent player. If I had their reaction time in 8 hours a day of practice, there
You'd
wouldn't.
still be
I would be.
shit.
I would be
At
like
best,
I would be like a
average.
nameless or a Pac-Man. You know what I'm saying? Like I would have made it that. I would have been like a nameless or a Pac-Man.
I remember
or-
when one of the recent Call of Duty betas, we did something. To your credit, you were quite hungover, so you'd had 2 strawberry daiquiris the night before.
there's videos
and we
of
went-
my birthday.
we went upstairs to do like a Call of Duty tester thing, and there were times when I was watching it, I was thinking, Has he played this game before ever?
Where? At E3?
At E3 that time. There were some shots where someone was in a straight line running and you were trying to be a bit too impressive and you were flicking it and it was just flicking off the screen.
Well, one, I wasn't using my SCUF controller. Two, there was lag on the thing because it was connected through Bluetooth and we were playing on a plasma TV.
Not sure. I mean, I played in it afterwards, and I'm not sure that's true.
Yeah,
but we'll
that's all true. That's all true. Factual. I mean, look at my fucking stats now; they're horrible. But I'm an entertaining player, and that's all we get. Anyway, so back to it. Yeah, I think I'd be better if all the things that I have now would have been accessible to me.
We say the opposite for us, because if we'd done Decerto back in 2012 when I left, if we'd actually done it full time then, I don't think we'd be where we are now, because we'd have just I matured so much in that time, in that 3-4 years I wasn't there, working in other jobs, moving around. I think we all
we all learned a lot.
We learned stuff the hard way, I would say, to be honest, because we put a lot of work in for half a decade and genuinely very little came out of it. So we thought we can't continue the trajectory.
Well, maybe that's why I think that you guys didn't work that hard, right? Because not a lot came out of it. I'm kidding, totally joking. I don't know. I think that you guys would have been in a better position than you think you are. If you guys would have been one of the first to create this sort of news outlet, and we'll talk about this later, because you guys sort of are teetering on the line of being a good journalistic website and very, very TMZ and I don't think
that's the Goldilocks zone.
Yeah, it is. No, I agree. I don't know. I think it would have been one. It was super needed way back then, and by now you guys would have been able to sort of expand into every single esport and have that sort of.
Would we have become like a HLTV who they obviously do an amazing job, but they're so focused on CS:GO that they depend on whether CS:GO is successful or not. So if CS:GO dies, which hopefully it won't, then they're gonna the success of the game depends on how successful they are as a website. Whereas originally when we started Decerto again back in 2015, we went full time, changed the C to an X.
It is essentially a completely different business. Really,
we were Call of Duty focused, but then over the years we were like, oh well, let's maybe try Fortnite, let's maybe try CS:GO, and that's kind of how we've become successful. Is by we've become game-proof.
We're now industry-proof, basically. So we're game agnostic. Anything, if something dies, we're already on the next big thing. If anything, we run on our data. We know what's going to blow up. Obviously, we have a huge social footprint. We may have been the biggest Call of Duty, HLTV equivalent, but the reality is now we're the biggest esports website in the world. And that is precisely because we started off a little bit late. So serendipity or not, I'm sure it would have worked out both ways, touch wood, but the path that we're at now, we're more than happy with.
But I look back at tweets back in 2012 that I made, and I just think, what a fucking moron. I can't believe some of this.
I think that goes for everyone.
I know, but then to imagine that if I was then to try run a company when I was that immature, it's crazy.
There hasn't been a demand really for a HLTV for Call of Duty that much, really, because I think that we've tested out a lot of different types of articles and stuff like that over the years, and a lot of people kind of make it out that they want this really fact-driven content. If you go on HLTV, it's an incredibly rich source of information for CS.
They've also got a lot of
people
data,
do like that.
Stats,
yeah, it is. But the thing is, in Call of Duty, I think the audience is a little bit more casual on the whole. Well, it definitely is. And we went through periods where we were putting out these pretty hardcore articles, and no one was reading them because people claim they want that, but they actually don't. They then never read it. So you're basically just flushing money down the toilet and catering for a few people who are claiming that they want something that they actually don't.
And as you know, it's all video anyway when it comes to some of the hardcore stuff.
Yeah, that's it's interesting. So two things. Why did it? Obviously, I know that it had to do something with copyright, right? Somebody else owned Decerto, DEC.
So when we went full time, so the word Decerto is with a C, which is DECERTO, is actually Latin, I think, for fight to the finish. So a lot of people have already kind of used Decerto in different ways. Obviously, we were the biggest, but there was a team Decerto. Other people had used it, and then also I think some guy had registered Decerto as a company in the UK.
Yeah, Decerto Media it was.
So by changing it to an X, it kind of kept the same name or the same saying of it, although people call it Dexerto.
Dan Chacon being one of them.
Yeah.
Dexerto, Decerto.
Dexterto.
Yeah.
We should do a PSA on how to say it.
It's Decerto.
Decerto.
DESERTO.
Yeah,
Decerto.
Decerto. Yeah.
So because that is basically just a made up word, it meant that we could get everything. We could get every domain for every language. We could get, all the company stuff.
It was a fresh start, basically, because as I said briefly before, this isn't the same company that was a forum. In a way, it's carried some of it over, but it was a clean start. We weren't coming in with the forum; we were coming in with a totally new strategy, a real business. The original Decerto forum was registered purely on the basis that it made a bit of advertising money. This was a completely new thing. We came with a proper structure. We got a small amount of money to kind of kick things off, to get people like Mike full time, Josh and I as well. And it's evolved from there, really.
We lost, just for the record, we lost a lot of our SEO clout when we did that because we weren't experienced, we didn't know. So when we got rid of Decerto overseas, we just binned the website that had about 4 or 5 years of millions of page views.
That forum was huge back in the day.
It was.
We had 100,000 members on it. We were getting 500,000 page views a day, which is a lot. And maybe a month.
No,
it was a month, wasn't it? Yeah. So actually, it wasn't that much, but it was like a lot. And for us to kind of change and go with the X, and the thing is, the website had kind of died out by that time because I'd not been working on it. You guys have been busy doing other stuff. Hadn't really been anyone doing anything. The only regret is the forums are kind of gone. I don't know where they are now.
Social media.
They are gone. The thing is, though, it's whether there was even appetite to still have that, because it's come kind of niche, and new users were signing up to Twitter instead, because this was pre-Twitter. Where else were people discussing, finding scrims, that kind of thing? They were going to Decerto, at least in Europe.
It costs money to monitor a forum as well, a lot.
Yeah. Because and everyone gets tetchy about what's been posted and stuff. And do you go in the direction of heavily moderating it, or do you kind of let it go free, but then you end up with a 4chan or 8chan situation where you can't have that, and it just becomes super ugly.
Yeah, and also just forums they're not really a thing much anymore, are they? I think everyone goes on Twitter, people go on Reddit, but that's it. Everyone's got their own subreddit, but you rarely go on a website and then there's an active forum.
Yeah,
it doesn't exist.
Yeah,
I can't remember the last time I went to any forum that wasn't Reddit, where people were having an actual conversation about something. Where I grew up on 12 Ounce Profits, a graffiti website, and that was all I did. Every waking moment of my life while I was working at Harris Bank or First Bank and Trust or whatever, I was always on that. And at the time, the iPhones didn't exist, so I couldn't be on there. I can only imagine how many jobs I would have lost if all I kept saying is there's a graffiti competition here, I'm going to draw here at work or whatever. But yeah, I don't think that there is such a thing as... aside from Reddit, I think that's the reason why Reddit's so big, is because they're filling in. They're sort of like the forum for everybody for each specific.
It's one login. You don't have to log in all these different websites. Forget your password. You get banned. You have to create another account. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to do that anymore. It's just one
the
place.
Gamers exist on Twitter as well, by the way. As far as Esports is concerned, that's where the platform.
Yeah. You get to interact with some lovely people as well on Reddit. So.
You guys were banned from the Call of Duty Reddit.
That was my fault.
Oh god, it was funny because we
deserved the ban. It was my fault. Basically, I came in a bit when we restarted the website, and I came in a bit gung ho, being like, I'm just going to be edgy. I'm going to do this, going to do that. And basically, on the forum, I didn't really understand the rules about self promotion, so I just posted a bunch of stuff. I think it was an interview you'd done, and then they kept deleting it, and I got frustrated. So I tweeted out and I said,
"Well, no, it was at an event, and we wanted
it was an event. It was in Columbus,
and
I tweeted out in frustration saying, if someone posts this on Reddit, we'll give them a GB gift card or something like that, which was like 200 points. I don't know what GB.
Was.
Anyway, I deleted it within about a minute, but obviously someone from Reddit had seen it, and that's obviously bribing or the rules. So we eventually got banned from that forum, and I think we were banned for 3 years. But you know what? We actually say it was the best thing that ever happened to us, because before that, we were relying on. We'd always create content, and this is what I always tell the content staff: don't create content that you think is only going to be successful if it gets posted on Reddit, because then you just got a huge. Someone else writes about it. So the amount of times we write an article and then someone else copies it and then it gets posted on there is insane. So the fact that we couldn't post anything on Reddit was the best thing that happened to us, because then we had to find out how to get views elsewhere. We had to work out how to get views via social media. We had to work out how to get views via SEO.
To back it up slightly, we weren't as reliant on Reddit as I think that last.
No, I'm saying it was
important. Definitely,
I'm saying it was important, and that especially when we were getting 4,000 views a day. You know what I mean? That if
dark
you get
times.
Dark times, if we get that for an article now, I'll be raging.
The thing is, we at the time I remember, because Mike and I were in the press room. It was at the MLG Arena
in Columbus.
You guys did work at one point. I remember that.
So and we were up there, and all of a sudden, I just saw his message come through.
We should check his phone and see what his average app time is. To see
his average screen time will be 12 hours with a gap to scrim Call of Duty that he calls work. He turns in his 0.79 KD ratio, turns his stream off, gets back onto Instagram, just looking at his own profile mostly.
I'm trying to find my screen time, but it's bad.
I bet it makes for ugly viewing that. I'm surprised you don't have calluses on your fingers from scrolling so much. So.
No, but I do have it from being such a good player at Call of Duty.
Yeah.
This one's hurting. My trigger finger hurts a little bit.
And it was like I was quite frustrated at the time. I remember because at the time I was like, just tone it down. But the thing is, on the flip side of it, I understand where Mike was coming from because that Reddit particularly, it was COD competitive Reddit, and we were the only press. In fact, I rarely remember seeing any other press at the MLG Arena. I think there was one event where other press were there, sat in the crowd, and so we were the only ones there, and yet no one would post the the coverage thing on it. And I've spoken to the Reddit moderators before, and I was basically their theory is that everything that the audience is going to be interested in will make it onto Reddit, and I'm like, that's just not how it could ever work. It requires someone to find it first. It requires someone to be confident enough to put it out there, because Reddit is quite a judgmental place. If you post something that people don't care about, you get shot down for it. And so I'm saying, this is something that people want. It's a coverage hub about content full of interviews from the only competitive Call of Duty event taking place today. How is this not relevant to the audience?
It's not changed, by the way.
No, the thing is, one of the mod at Reds actually, can he speak? Reddit mods actually works for us, like as a writer. He's one of our senior writers. You know what I mean?
Is that allowed?
Well, he doesn't post any content, so yeah. So, and you know what? Very, very rarely will our content go on there, and if it does, there's always replies from people who would just have this perception. I don't know why they're so bothered about us, but they're still so bothered, and they'll probably put this on here. They're still so bothered about. They're like, oh, you misaligned this, or you've redone that.
Angry? I wonder.
I don't know why this. I don't know why they're so. I don't know why they're so bothered.
We don't really have to care that much because, frankly, we get all our views not from Reddit, and when we do get on Reddit, it's not on Call of Duty. But they're really angry people. I'm sure it's the same on other Reddit forums, but they've just got so much time in their hands to complain about absolutely everything. And one of the most important things that ever happened was when Mike said, it's not, in a moment of fury, it's not about, the angry, the vocal minority, it's about a silent majority.
Yeah.
And the amount of people and the amount of stuff that we see that other people won't see, where people absolutely love what we do, is in abundance. You know what I mean?
We get so much shit for the stuff. But
it's social media in general. It's just as much as it's been an important facilitator for esports, right, and gaming. At the same time, I absolutely hate it. I think there's so much vitriol in there. So many people are willing to say something that you wouldn't dream of saying in real life.
Of course.
Reddit is not that much better.
100%. It's the equivalent of, like, if you were in a restaurant and your food turned up and it wasn't great, you'd be like, excuse me, this isn't proper. But alternatively, people wait, they get home and they get on Twitter and they're like, bullshit, man, I would have kicked his head in. It's the most garbage thing I've ever eaten. It's like, it's such a
someone's business.
Yeah, going back to like what Josh said about the vocal minority, if you allow that vocal minority to dictate the way that you operate your business or make your decisions. This is a freebie for any publisher,
by the way.
That is a guarantee way to tank your operations, because those people are generally clueless, but they've got a voice. They think their voice should be heard. They think they know better than you, who's got a wealth of data, years of experience, obviously understands the audience to be able to operate, but they somehow know better because they've taken 10 seconds out.
Do you know
who
some of the stupidest people are when it comes to that as well? Is actually some of the influencers and pro players who don't even leverage us. We're one of the biggest esports. Well, we are the biggest esports website. We're getting, I don't know if we want to say figures on here, but
I have it marked down here to tell me later, like, what the numbers look like.
Yeah, insane numbers, right? Crazy numbers. And yet we'll write about someone. For example, I know Hecz gets annoyed all the time. We'll write about Hecz, and he'll actively complain that we've written an article about him when we're exposing him to people well beyond his little circle who know about him. Yeah. And that to me is just crazy. It's crazy to me that I don't have influencers, and I rarely do have influencers or pro players coming to me and saying, Mike, I need help with this, I need help with that, or I've got this coming out, do you want to push it? Can we do a story? Can we do an interview? It's always me going to them.
Some people do, though, and some people that you wouldn't be surprised by.
And they're one person who's always really good at it, Jack Courage Dunlop. Yeah. He always came to me, he'd come to me and be like, whenever we wanted to do something, he'd always be down to do it. And you know what? I'm not saying that we're the reason he was successful, but he did that with loads of other people. He got his name out there. He put his brand out there. I don't get why pro players are so annoyed about it. They're paid salaries by organisations that are sponsored by companies because they want sponsorships. They want their names out there, and those people are actively not trying to not put their name out there. It just doesn't make any sense to me, and I think what's one of the real issues in this space is influencers and pro players just do not understand how to market themselves, and actually what they do is they fight back against people like us who write stories about them. And fair enough, sometimes if it's a negative story, I understand, but a lot of the time it'll be like something they've said, and they'll be like annoyed. They're annoyed that we've took something that they've said and reported about it. Fair enough, it goes out of context, and sometimes it does, and we try to rectify it where possible, but most of the time
that's a very, very minority situation.
I don't think it does at all, and obviously the feedback has allowed us to improve upon doing that, you know what I mean? But I don't think we take it out of context at all.
The thing is, this is like
accidentally.
I think a lot of players, and I'm talking about globally, right? Maybe pick 2 esports out there that this doesn't apply to, but a lot of pro players still are living under this illusion that their job is to win games.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? It's the wildest thing to me. Like I was listening to Krim on the podcast. Shout out to Nameless. But he's like, before I got to Optic, they were a content team. I'm like, and when he said that, I'm like, hell yeah, we were, right? Like, hell yeah, we were. But I think he meant it like in a derogatory way, to where like, you know, it wasn't until that, like, yeah, hell yeah, for sure we were. Like, that was deliberate. It wasn't an accident that we were creating more content than anybody else. Like, this illusion of you becoming who you envision you're going to become, status wise, financially, or whatever, just off of winning a game doesn't fucking work. Okay. One of the things that I say in meetings, in sponsorship meetings, every single time when I was working and actually going to
can't even say it with straight face
to events. One of the things that I said, I'm like this. I said, if a tree falls in the middle of the forest and nobody's around to hear you win a championship, did you really win a fucking championship?
I like that.
No, you did. No one cares. You know, people have to care about you,
absolutely,
in order for that to happen. So
you'd rather be a character who lost in an epic tale, and everyone heard about how you almost got better. Rocky Balboa, who, you know, he didn't win, but he did all 15 rounds and whatnot. It's a better story than the guy who won and no one really gave a fuck about.
Yeah, but it's like one name. Ready? Nate Shot. Best player in Call of Duty? No. Most successful in Call of Duty? You know,
he's in a conversation.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That's what I mean. When people are like, "Oh, look at the earnings," I'm thinking, well, Scump did that without having to, you know, like all this players' earnings is just counting the things that they won on tournaments. But then when I know the real numbers and I'm looking at that and saying, I'm like, yeah, that's a lot of money, but there's way more money over here that he's done on his own stuff.
100%. You know what I'm saying? You know, and it increases what you can demand for a salary if you're more marketable as well. You know, a lot of football players, it's not or soccer players, when they're signed for a club, it's not just signed on the back of, you know, they're going to bring glory to that team. They'll also sell shirts. You know, David Beckham was obviously a great player, but his value was greatly increased because straight away Beckham shirts would just fly off the shelves.
It's not just players, is it? And you'll know this. It's companies don't brand themselves that well either, to be honest, in esports. And that's to our advantage, everyone on this table, to be honest. We don't really talk too much about that, but branding in esports is shocking. People don't think they go in with this, you know, lofty idea of what they're going to do, and they forget about what their brand is synonymous with.
It's not even just teams; it's events as well. Some organisers, like I don't want to name any names, but sometimes, you know, you'll see the stream it'll be on a different stream that doesn't bear their name. You know, it'll be advertised like poorly. It'll be split between so many different platforms. As a casual fan, it's just so confusing. It becomes impossible to follow, and the branding is it's everywhere. There's no like a line strategy.
Tell you the problem with esports, right? Is that there's this core. Here he is. There's this core of esports, right? And everyone's worried about what this core in esports thinks. Nobody's thinking about how to get more people interested. If it just stays the same small amount of people, it's never going to grow. The whole point is with things like Fortnite. Yeah, Epic got loads of shit for the way they did the World Cup, and look, a lot of the things they did weren't good, but they made it accessible to everyone. They made it accessible to the casual, and therefore loads of people were interested. That's what you've got to do. You can't just keep it. You can't always cater to your tiny audience. You've got to cater well beyond that, and that's why people like Nadeshot did well, because he blended casual audience with competitive. Yeah. If he just focused on competitive and he just made competitive videos, he would have never got to where he was.
He literally made a show called Turning Casual into Competitive, where he would go into a regular casual game and would start doing call-outs, making his team make call-outs, and you know what I'm saying? Like that's the name of this day and age. Look, like me, you were born too early and you're doing something that's not as evolved as it's going to be in 10 years. Get over it. Adapt. that's a popular word nowadays, adapt and become what you're supposed to be in this day and age. You're not going to be the pro player that the pro players from 5 years from now are going to be, where their job will be only to win championships. But we have to build that audience for that to be successful. We have to build that interest in the sport before people will actually be like interested in just the winning.
It's interesting the amount of presentations and stuff I've seen over the years where they'll have like an apex, and it's like the top is the pro players, then the next is like the fans, then the next is the casual audience, and there'll be a bit of lip service paid to the idea that we want to tap into the that casual audience. But I get the impression that they'll say that, they'll show that slide or whatever on the presentation or whatever they're giving, and they'll walk out that room and it's like, that's completely forgotten about. And then there's so little effort made to get to a wider audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, that is what's holding things back largely.
It doesn't help about the fact that esports is, football, golf, soccer, basketball. You don't really conflate them, do you? You don't really think about sports as sports. You think about them as their individual entities, right? Esports is not that impressive when broken down. It's not collectively, and it's nothing wrong with existing together to thrive together. Yeah, okay, it's getting growth, it's getting numbers, but broken down, all of a sudden, it becomes a lot less, interesting.
That's why most organisations exist. They can pull the talent that is involved.
Yeah, but the reality
games.
is that you don't want to. It's better. I think he'll be a better community if the word esports is secondary and people focus more on Call of Duty, CS:GO, the names.
Yeah.
I don't know. Very, very soon here, everybody that's competing right now that isn't doing the extra work to... And the other thing is, like, why wouldn't you want to do the extra work to be bigger than...
What makes a gamer lazy, by the way? What's the difference that you've seen between a nade shot and someone who could have all the opportunities in the world, but we just can't be asked?
It's the attitude. The attitude.
Entitlement?
Yeah, I don't know if it's entitlement or I just
or is it
boil
comfort?
It down.
They just become comfortable with what they've given.
I don't know. I think it's they're like, I'm not gonna do that. It's the too cool factor. I'm not gonna get in front of the camera and be open about who I am.
That's fear, though, isn't it? It's not really.
If I was a 20-year-old COD player, I'd be absolutely terrified about what's going to happen in 10 years. Because if if your reaction times, they'll start to dwindle, and if you don't get your name out there and you don't become a personality and you don't get your face out there, then what are you going to do? Who is going to give you a job?
Yeah, and a lot of these
there's a few players who I've seen in the past over the last few years, and they've been not necessarily a dick to me, but they've been there's some people that have been like wouldn't do interviews or bit like Saki or constantly making comments on Twitter, and I've seen them this year. They've not been picked up by teams. I've seen them tweeting about needing money. You know what I mean? It's you've got to like
a lot of these people. I mean, I've seen players in the past shouting like check my bank balance and stuff like that. But a lot of these players, they need to realise that what they're doing now is likely this is their highest earning potential they may ever have. So they need to be thinking about how they're going to basically take the money that they've got on the position they're in now and fashion that into something that will last them for a lifetime, something that will last them when they're at age 70, because otherwise they potentially their career will end, and then they'll be out, and most likely they haven't gone to college or whatever. They're not necessarily in a position to get anywhere near the kind of money that they're on now, and it's going to be such a shock to their lifestyle when they're constantly wearing. Every COD pro at the moment has like Gucci shoes, a Gucci bag. It's like standard Call of Duty uniform, and it's just, in a way, it's just squandering money that they need to help stretch out a little bit.
You got to look good.
Do they even look good half the time? Like when every kid's got a Gucci backpack.
Someone who
defeats the point.
You mentioned him before. Someone who's actually done well at kind of transitioning away from being a pro player is Nameless. When he went into the casting, he went and doing the podcasting. But how many people are going to be able to transition into casting? How many of the pro players that are going to be able to transition and do that?
Yeah,
it's just
not every ex-basketball pro becomes a commentator for the NBA.
Yeah. This is my problem. Okay,
but basketball pros get paid millions and millions.
Exactly.
COD pros
only
get
because
thousands.
Only because of the state that it's in right now. Because of the amount of the audience, it's developed over years and years.
Yeah, I'm not saying it'll always be the case.
Can you imagine Michael Jeffrey Jordan in this ecosystem today, where LeBron is closing $1 billion Nike deal? That's the best athlete in the history of humanity, everybody. Undisputed, and we will not argue about it. But can you imagine that? This is my problem. It's always been my problem, okay? People have seen what we have done, and some have tried to replicate it. Maybe one has been able to surpass what we have done, right?
Yep.
But then you see it, and you
they've done it quite differently, to be fair.
Yeah. No, but it's good. But it started a certain way, right? They saw a path, they took it, they reinvented themselves in a way. But if you look at pro players and you look at somebody like Jack, okay, a literal. I mean, he wasn't that big. He was just a walk-on caster.
Yeah.
Look at him now.
He referred to himself in a video he did with us as a shitty tier 4 caster.
No,
look at him.
I think
far from that now.
Whatever it
But he
was.
started as an intern, and then he moved his way up. But he always had a goal and being like,
He always had a
I want to get
roadmap.
to this stage. And you know what? He doesn't really necessarily. I don't speak to him as much anymore. You know, but that's fine because he's getting to that size now where he's like
He's got better friends.
he's got better friends. he's got better things to do and talk to me.
Somebody yesterday brought up the quote from Jody High Roller or Riff Raff, as people know.
Yeah.
He's actually like, I want to get so famous that I forget who people are, or like that I act like I don't know people, or something like that. And I'm not saying that that's where Jack is, but if you look at his path to where he is now, he would cast and see no pro players streaming Call of Duty and say, I'm gonna take that audience,
Yeah.
okay, because whatever. And he was good enough to that he would get into lobbies with pro players.
But he was also clever about it. He did stuff like the Robot World League or whatever it was, Bot
Amazing.
World League,
Yeah.
where he basically just got bots to play against
Yeah.
each other and made tournaments,
Yeah.
and then commentated and was funny around it. Show me a pro player who's done that. You know what I
Jack's
mean?
been super smart of it.
Yeah.
He's had a roadmap. He's got a vision of where he wants to be in X years' time, and he's worked towards that. He's made the right moves.
Yeah. So Hitch, for example, right? He texted me this morning. He's like, holy shit, the esports are tomorrow. Am I going to that? And I'm like, the first thing, and I'll show you the text. I'm like, if you want to go, yeah. But in my opinion, you should not be doing anything besides streaming right now. He's up to 7,500. Well, the TST is up to 7,500 subs.
Yeah, it's not that.
And they're like, and then he said something like, we take Saturdays off. I'm like, you're not taking no fucking days off.
You know what? This to me is a bit of a different conversation. I think it's almost like an American mentality, but this to me has gotten a bit crazy. Like people
work
like
hard nonstop.
Well, it's almost like I mean, I understand why you're in a position to milk it as much as possible, but it gets to a point where, and for Hitch, it does make sense. But someone like people talk about, say, Ninja, and he can't have a day off because it will cost him X amount of money. But surely for his long-term health and I guess expanding other opportunities and not just, continuing and slowly stagnating, he's got to carve out time and actually commit to a schedule rather than saying, I'm just going to do it 24/7 and keep amassing cash. Because at some point, that is just going to become too much.
Dr. Disrespect's a good one because he's always done like Monday to Friday predominantly, unless like games are being released.
Yeah.
Monday to Friday he's going to be on. I never go on Twitch and expect to see him on a Saturday or Sunday. But if people expect someone to be on every single day, there's going to be times that you'll go on and you'll be like, oh, he's not on, that's weird. Like, and then maybe you won't check again the next day because you're expecting it every single day.
Yeah.
But
the schedule stuff is actually very clever from him. Yeah, to every Monday he's like, or Sunday he's like, here's my stream schedule. Part of the interruption, I know you guys are enjoying the sort of podcast as much as I was when I was doing it. Those dudes are mad funny. But we have a brand new sponsor for the podcast, so I'm super psyched about that. Thank you to Escape the Invasion. And I'm not a big board game sort of guy. I'm not. Okay, I play video games and I do content. But this game caught my attention, okay? Because if you have ever wondered what you do if you find yourself in the middle of a post-apocalyptic world that has been ravaged by a deadly virus and is inflicted by aliens, this is the game for you. You've got to check out this game, okay? Escape the Invasion. It's all about the immersive experiences, and they just announced that they launched their new post-apocalyptic theme subscription box. So every month you get a box and you play a new game. As I was going through it, I was super intrigued about how crazy it was for you to immerse yourself in something that it's like reading a book, but you're interacting with it in a very, very cool place. The cool thing about this is this is from the makers of Hunt a Killer, the popular true crime mystery subscription game. Comes Escape the Invasion, a sci-fi game where you can be a survivor on a rapidly dying Earth after an alien invasion. Okay, the plot is pretty much this. You find refuge in a government bunker, but it's safer than the outside world. You don't know. Can you trust your fellow survivors? I don't know. You think you're safe now, but you found refuge, but there's a council that creates and controls every aspect of life in that bunker. What will you choose, freedom or safety? You don't know. You have to make these choices, and every choice has a consequence, as it does in everything that you do, okay? It's been called an escape room delivered to your door where Fallout meets Alien. Okay, Escape the Invasion is a great way to get your phones and connect with friends, or if you prefer a solo adventure, you can interact with the online community to swap theories and help others out. High quality and handcrafted clues get you lost in the post-apocalyptic world and make you feel like humanity truly is in your hand. So again, you literally get this sort of brief box, all right, like a top secret brief that you open up. You have your instructions, you have your top secret, everything. You go, you do it, you kill it, and you have the time of your life in this immersive experience. Again, it's like you're a part of a play in your own home, whether it's in the kitchen, the couch, wherever it is you you want to do it. Right now, just for our listeners, you can go to escapetheinvasion.com/eavesdrop for 20% off your first box. That's escapetheinvasion.com/eavesdrop. For 20% off your first box, escapetheinvasion.com/eavesdrops. Can you survive the alien apocalypse? I know I did, because I'm smart. I'm wicked smart. Go to, one more time, for the people in the back, go to escapetheinvasion.com/eavesdrop for 20% off of your first box. Okay, and just a little background. Again, this comes 5 years after aliens release a deadly virus on Earth when they try to take over our communities. All right, enjoy it. Let's get back to the podcast, back at the Hecz quarters with the Decerto folks.
Well, throwing back to like what Call of Duty was like before, I think definitely we've seen a lot of improvements. Like going back to the too cool factor, I remember there was a period where it was too cool to practice, and like teams would get knocked out of a tournament, but they'd be like, yeah, but that loser, he was playing all the time. I've just turned up, I haven't played in 4 weeks, and it's like, at what point is that cool? Like
they're doing it right now. They're like, well, Empire's only winning because they're spending the most time. Like, that's the most asinine shit I've ever heard in my life. Obviously, morons. The fact that people are talking shit to Empire for trying their asses off to win something,
that makes no sense.
Krim quoted someone, didn't he? And they were like, why are you even trying? All the rules are going to be changed. And he's like, what? Why am I trying? Like, what?
But imagine using your basketball example, LeBron James turning around and saying, the Celtic are, like, they've got a better record than us, but they're practicing harder than us. Yeah. That would never, ever happen.
No. Even worse is that these players are still playing a lot of video games anyway, so as if they can, pot call the kettle black or whatever.
Yeah. It's not like they're playing 0 hours, but even then it's like, surely you're committed to this is your occupation. Mm-hmm. But it seems like obviously there's a lot of young people in it, but it's when you hear stories about people can't wake up for scrims and stuff like that, and it's like, this is your job.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, I think I can see teams doing this more. There's like an image that's been doing the rounds recently, and it's Frank Lampard, the manager of Chelsea. It's a picture of all the fines that he's implemented at Chelsea, and one of them is like, you're late for training, £20,000 fine straight off the bat. Yep. And teams should be doing this because players should not be getting up at 5 p.m. When they're meant to be starting scrimming at 5 p.m. It just doesn't make sense. You need to be treating it as a job.
I think this year they changed it with the CDL. I think a lot of the teams are trying to change it so they're actually playing a lot earlier. So
should be.
They're starting to play at like midday now instead of like starting scrims at like 6-7 o'clock.
I mean that's still insane.
You played late, didn't you?
Yeah, but back then obviously there was no support, so to speak. There was no idea.
When it's your full-time job, it's just mad that.
Yeah. Don't forget, obviously, it all comes down to the fact that unlike a training ground, on a soccer field where there are scheduled times in which you go practice with your teammates, you can plug on that Xbox or PlayStation, PC, and play at any time of the day. By extension, your competition are playing it every second of every day. So you're competing and practicing against people who are playing more than you. There's always someone playing more. In football, it's more scheduled than that. So, or soccer, or basketball.
I guess stuff like that are dictated by light as much as anything.
The question is, there needs to be a report or research into when diminishing returns hits, right?
Yeah,
when it's too much.
That I think players too. I think sometimes they do play too much, and it's like they're willing to just.
But their social life is on there as well. That's why they're on there. It's not just.
That's actually a good point.
Yeah. I'm very intrigued as to how like sports science and stuff is going to come more into esports, to be honest, because there's so many unanswered questions that we've got at the moment, like how things like diet affects you.
Look at Astralis in CS:GO. They were always a team that choked in the semi-finals. They could never get through, and then suddenly they got in a sports psychologist, they got in dietitians, they all started like losing weight, getting fit, and it's like now they're like the best team in the world. Clinically, they're just a clinical team.
Do you know? I mean, of course there are, but what are the first things you notice, or what are the biggest things you notice when you start bringing in that professional sports, the sports people into the scene? What do you notice most? Is it the fitness? Is it the sleep schedule?
It's the mental.
It's the mental.
Mental rest, mental and nutrition out of them, like health.
Yeah,
all the 360 of health. So whether it's mental health, nutrition, and getting enough rest for your body to recoup.
And how do these sports experts speak to the players? Because obviously it's a new.
It's a new science within itself.
It's a sub-science,
it's different, right? Because you've got to think
you're dealing with the difference of someone like, and that's not to undermine a lot of professional sports players out there, but they're quite simply less internet savvy and they're less aware of all this different kind of culture going on. So they've got, I guess, less, let's call it, attitude about stuff, right? Whereas obviously in esports we have all of this preconception about being the best.
Yeah.
So to kind of untangle that psyche, you know what I mean? I bet it's a different kettle.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, obviously in traditional sports comes a culture of this is the way things are done. Period. Done. That's it. No conversation.
It's been perfected.
Right. That's what it is. You're gonna get up at this time. This is your schedule. You're gonna get fined. This that. In esports, it's sort of like the first time that you have childhood stars or child stars to become like this sort of, super famous person, and that affects your psyche no matter what it is. And when there's no true infrastructure, as there hasn't been for the past 5 years, where you can literally know the rules, you start to wake up later than you want to because in your mind you trained until 6 a.m. but you were what it was 8 or whatever. Like it's more accessible, and that's your social, as you were saying. So that sort of interaction is something that sort of becomes a part of your life, and thus you think that I'm doing my job, but you're not showing up on time for the things that matter. So it's weird. We've never seen, and we won't know the true outcome of what this looks like. I mean, if you look at traditional, let's call it Vine stars or superstars, and we talked about, I don't know if it was the last podcast that we talked about. Oh yeah, we did. Where think about what's going to happen where you become famous enough to where a lot of people recognize you, but you're not making enough money off of whatever it is that you're doing to where you have to go get a regular job in the public. Nobody knows the psychology behind that yet.
Well, funnily enough, I was reading about Jackass when that was popular. A few of the smaller cast members on that, like one of them called Rab himself. When he came out of the show,
Rab himself.
Yeah, he was popular, but he had to take a job waiting tables in a place, and he said like he served this one dude, and the guy's like, "Wow, you're Rab himself," and he's like, "Yeah, what's your order?" And the guy just couldn't believe it. And there's a period with Steve-O as well at the start where obviously he was like really struggling with drug addiction and stuff. And he hadn't earned enough for the show, but he'd become insanely famous. Yeah. So he was still like living on the street and stuff. And he'd meet fans and they'd be like, "Hey, Steve-O," and he'd be like, "Hey, bro, can I sleep on your sofa tonight?" and stuff like that. And I don't want to say that that's where Call of Duty could eventually go, but it's not impossible.
No, it's not impossible, and that's what I mean. If you see that your opportunity is now to really build your brand, if you stream and get 1,000 subscribers, that's an extra $3,500 a month that you can add on to your salary.
Absolutely,
right?
And then you save.
Yeah, you can save, right? Yeah, you can save it. You can get an additional, hey, here comes Elgato. Hey, if you do a read for us this month, we'll pay you $2,000 a month. Now you have $5,500 on top of whatever $10,000 a month you're getting. I mean, now it's obviously outrageous what they're getting paid. But if you think about that, like right now is the time for you to save your chips to make sure that you're doing that. And that every single second that you're like, I'm not going to do this interview, or I'm a pro player, I'm not going to do videos, I'm not going to stream, I'm not going to do this. You're thinking as an esports athlete in 2025. What? Yeah, right. 2025. I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. You're thinking at what their life is going to be like. You're paving the way for somebody else. You gotta make peace with the fact that somebody else is going to come in after you and take full benefit of everything that you've laid down the ground for. But it's your fault too for not taking the advantage that was put in front of you. Like
you want to max out your situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Every single time. I was just. I never, not once, no matter how small or big the deal was that came to Optic, I took it because we just fluctuated what the deliverable was going to be. But we never said no to money. We had to take it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? We had no investors. We had no real staff, obviously. So we took it. We never said no to something unless it was super, super whack or something that would.
That's a symptom of the way and the good way of how you made the business, right? Because sometimes taking the money can make it a little bit easier. Whereas when you have to fight for every penny, you understand the value of every sponsorship that comes through. Yeah.
So again, look, it's no mystery and there's no mistake that we had a good culture. I mean, if you look at our people that have self-sustainable careers, big brands on their own to be able to make a living with or without an organization. That was deliberate. It wasn't an accident that happened. It wasn't they just got lucky and got Nadeshot and Scumpy on the same team. Oh, big timer. Like, look at them now, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, these people have gone on to do big shit because of the culture that we created within ourselves.
Well, do you think, or have you noticed a correlation when you've, for all your years in Call of Duty, where the people who are the real winners, the people who win the most tournaments, also have the best attitude? Or is it generally, do they not necessarily go hand in hand?
I don't know. I don't think it goes hand in hand. The other thing is, like, when you're told every single day that you're the greatest person ever,
you start to believe your own hype.
You start, yeah. I never look as much
that's
as
what's happened to you, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, look. Yeah. So that's what happened to me. Yes. No one has told me. So, like with Nadeshot, when Nadeshot was blowing up, like, we'd be proud of his accomplishment, but we never treated him fucking differently. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. You end up with Justin Bieber
syndrome.
You
want friends around you who are going to keep you grounded.
Clean your fucking room. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's like, no one's like, hey, let me clean this for you. No. Wipe your ass.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like
with
that's
the what do you call them?
baby
wipes
wipes.
that you use.
Yeah, he's not an
not
animal.
with.
I've started doing that as well. You're not
You're
really meant to flush them, but they are good, aren't they? I've never been so clean down there.
Yeah, you're welcome. And you stand up to do it.
You know what? I noticed that crept into a different podcast recently, but from polls I've seen online, 50% of people
it's
stand up, so
50-50.
I'm not
Yeah, it's
alone. In
Well,
this.
he said it's because otherwise you wouldn't wipe your ass with a dry towel. It's equivalent.
Well, yeah,
to doing that,
exactly.
Isn't it?
It is like you wouldn't just, if there was a stain on the table, you wouldn't just wipe it with something dry, would you? You know, if you got shit on your hand, you wouldn't just wipe it
Isn't
with
your
a bit of
ass like
toilet roll.
self-cleaning though, to some degree?
Is what?
Isn't your ass like self-cleaning?
Scum. This is
It
getting
only took
degraded.
30 minutes to get
It only
talking about
took 30
shit and
minutes
ass.
to
man.
Yeah. What do you mean self-cleaning?
It's
So-
not self-cleaning, is it?
Well, no, because there are parts of your body which self-clean. That's the way it works.
Hair self-cleans. If you obviously wash your hair, but the point of the oils in your hair is
So
to
what
clean
do
your
you
hair.
go? What's happened up there?
It's too much. I've gone too clean. It's just rubbed
You
away.
went too clean.
Yeah, it went crazy.
For years, I used to use straighteners, and I think that's
I
part of the
don't-
process.
I don't think. I mean, I had long hair at one point. I think I just wasted all the hair that I had. Just
Yeah.
ran out of it.
That's
It was a
what
mistake.
happens.
I
Yeah.
am envious of your mane. It is
Wait,
good, isn't
so
it?
are you talking about 50% of the people stand up to
Yeah,
wipe their ass?
Allegedly,
Stand up
I
to
mean,
wipe,
I've seen
yeah.
polls that suggest that.
Yeah, no, it's. And everyone else thinks that unless you've had this conversation, which we've had obviously a lot, everyone else.
Us four.
If you've never had that conversation, then
You don't really know.
you don't know that if someone might do it a different way.
Well, that's neither here. I mean, let's move on. I love talking about poops with you guys.
It's not.
but-
It's not the place this time.
That's
Is it?
not
We'll,
the
we'll
place.
bring
We
this
just
up
talked
later.
about it too much, almost.
Yeah,
way too much.
Every time around you.
Yeah, I don't know. As we were having that conversation, I'm like, hey, we gotta stop. the cycle stops today,
Yeah.
boys. Okay,
Because
not on
it'll
camera.
just get worse and worse.
I'm very intrigued going back to that winning mentality thing. I'm very intrigued as to how like the CDL is
Yeah.
going to go in that direction. I mean, obviously
I
you're
think there's a
part
lot more
of
infrastructure,
NRG.
isn't there? There's more infrastructure. There's more. I think
Don't
to
like
have a
franchi-
franchise,
Don't
you-
like franchise.
to have a
Yeah.
franchise,
Yeah.
you'll have to meet certain criteria.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the best thing about franchising is actually it's good for the players.
Yeah.
I want to see how evolved it gets as well, really, because I was listening to a podcast on the flight over yesterday, and one of the former Manchester United players, Gary Neville, was talking about his time in, under Sir Alex Ferguson, one of the best teams ever, to grace the Premier League at least. And just talking about like their winning mentality, both the players and what they were like as champions, and how they would never give an inch, and everything had to be super professional. You gave your all every single time. The manager, obviously, he always had these different brain techniques, whereby at one point, he'd said when it was introduced, where you had to at the start of the game walk past each other and shake everyone's hands. He said, make sure when you go out there, you shake everyone's hands and you look them in the eye, because 2 or 3 players will fold, and you'll know that you've got them beaten before you even start the game.
Realistically, how much did that actually contribute?
Well, that's the thing. You don't,
Especially
it's
nowadays, like,
It's
how many
impossible to
people actually
quantify
make
it, but
contact-
I'm very
contact.
intrigued. But the thing is, professional sport is all about the little margins that you can gain, the little advantages, because
or is it the mentality?
Well, it's a lot of those things, because
is it the fact that you're doing these not because the actions make
might
a
be for
difference,
you.
or because
Yeah.
the process in your head is going to make a difference?
it
right?
builds you up to the point where you're a winner, and it might not be that their head goes and that they fold, but in fact you think they folded, so you're more confident.
Well, what I want to see is with the introduction of, I believe this is the case, someone might correct me, is obviously you can have up to 10 players on your roster now, and you can in theory have a 5-man team, but someone might be playing badly on a couple of maps, and the coach might be like, right, we're going to sub Scump out, we're going to put someone else in. That's what you could do. Like, that's going to be really interesting when these pro players no longer are invincible, even during maps. Like, after the map, you might be like, shit, I've had a bad map, I'm going to get subbed off.
for that next
Yeah,
map.
or bring a specialist in. I think that's where we're going to see a lot of like growth, and I
I'm
think that's where we're
surprised
gonna
no
see a
one's
lot.
rolled the dice with having like one respawn team, one S&D team.
Well,
and
they
maybe
might
have
do.
like a couple of
We
constants.
don't know yet
and
because
you
you
sub
wouldn't
them
allow.
around.
You had to do it 24 hours before previously.
When you need 2 top teams, you're paying
You
more
effectively do,
salary,
yeah.
you know what I
You
mean?
are.
Yeah, I
Expensive.
don't know. We're all sort of adapting to this new world of franchising. Obviously, things have been done for so long a certain way. Last year, we moved to 5 players, and pubs was 5 players. We met in the middle from 4 to 6, I believe. Yeah, 4 to 6 on pubs, and now we're back to 6 on pubs and 5 on main stage, which makes no sense to me, but whatever.
There's no point in us grilling the game, because
Yeah.
we could add 10 more podcasts on the back of that, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously, right? There's so much things that are going down. I mean, obviously, now that we as owners have put up a significant amount of cash to make this thing work, and the amount of stuff that we have to do as not only do we have to put up a certain amount of cash to make this thing work, but on top of that, the amount of stuff that we have to come out of pocket for
Absolutely.
to do certain things. for the league to also benefit is crazy. One of the things that I'm getting that I've struggled with, at the beginning, is that in this new world, t-shirt sales, for example, all go into a pool and it gets, traditional sports. That to me, I'm looking at it, I'm like, well, what's,
that could be a deterrent for you. What's the
you
point
don't want a world where there's just, in the past, obviously it was good for you, but you don't really want a world where it's just one team and then everyone else.
Yeah.
Start of it, isn't it? It's a socialist concept within a capitalist idea.
Yeah.
The fact that the franchising is super capitalist, but the idea of sharing the revenue within it is quite socialist. It's
the thing is, and I've always had a problem with that, always from the beginning of time, right? I'm like, why, if my pro players are playing professionally and then on top of that creating content and nobody else is doing that, we're gonna sell the most t-shirts out of everyone. Why the fuck am I gonna throw money into this thing? And in this new world, it still affects me a little bit, and I still have to get used to that sort of mentality.
Your team still have to play someone, you know what I mean? That's the kind of...
No, I get it.
It can't just be your team and then...
I get it, but why...
But where do you draw the line?
What about the extracurricular stuff as well that is leading to us t-shirts?
Exactly, that's what you're saying. All that streaming is like... Because all of a sudden it becomes a deterrent. If no one else is doing it and you're thinking, wow, we're going to have to go out and stream just to make these shirt sales, and then we'll end up with a tenth of it or whatever. It just doesn't. It's almost puts you off doing it.
Takes away the incentive to pick up someone who isn't just about the performance as well.
Yeah. Oh, that was another thing that was like a massive argument. Some people are picking personalities over pro players any day of the week. Any day of the week. I'm here to sell tickets. Okay. As much as people don't like to hear it, it is a business.
It's entertainment. That's what it is.
Yeah, and it's entertainment. Of course, from the beginning of time, it will continue to be that. I'm
surprised most influencers haven't been picked up.
I don't know why. One of the things I said in the previous podcast.
You've not picked up anyone.
Who?
Scump, I guess, sort of is. I mean, most of the players they've got have been pre-groomed, really.
Yeah.
Were you not tempted by someone like Sensor,
though? Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
I'm just trying to get an article out of this.
So here you go. The reason that I would have picked up Sensor to be if I'm one of the smaller teams is because I want to have that personality that's going to attract people to buy tickets, right? And I need every single team in this league to do the extra work, no matter what it takes.
Yeah.
No matter what it takes, you have to. And I'm hoping that the players will just want to do it just for their own good sake.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to look good in 5 years when you're famous and you're out there, shipping stuff or printing or on the phone with somebody and somebody recognizes your voice. You know what I'm saying? Like if you call in for the bank, you say, hey, I'm calling to check my bank balance. And then if my voice came through, it's like, yo, Hecz, is that you? Yeah. No, but people have told me that I sound like me. So, I mean, like him. So, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, they need to do this. We need to sell tickets. We need to make this thing successful. And people aren't doing the extra work. I'm going to talk to whoever it is I need to talk to because my wagon is now hitched to theirs.
It is, 100%.
It has never been before.
So, now, on that note then, how are you feeling how the other franchises are performing so far in terms of the content they put out? Because, I mean, I don't want to name any names here, but
one team
some
hasn't
of
even
them
announced their
look
roster.
particularly garbage. I've seen somewhere the production values are just shocking. I saw one where it was in a studio.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I may as well name it now. This one was, I think, Minnesota. And they're playing in, they've got people playing in these pods. Mm-hmm. But no one's looked at it and thought, why have we got a guy sat behind a pod so you can see like an eighth of his head? Yeah. And it's like, who is doing this? The amount of money that's been put in, millions to buy the slot, and then you're spending countless amounts on salaries and stuff. Surely you need to spend proportionately in the other areas. You can't get a graphics guy who's a teenager doing it for $10 a week. You need to spend money on a dedicated person. You're essentially like a one-man band in terms of your content stuff, but you still have Matt working full-time on it. He's producing his podcast now. You're not skimping on it. You're not just doing it yourself and trying to be stingy.
Gets paid.
Yeah, exactly. And so he should. He's good.
He's all right.
That's only because
just smiling in the background. It's terrible. There's dog hair all over the mic.
So, I'm not. I don't want to talk bad about certain teams and their announcements. Like to each their own. Yeah. But in some cases, I would have, I would have gladly helped on some.
Well, it is a collective effort based on what you said. So why not?
The other thing is like a lot of people. It's hard because if you don't have that big of a fan followed roster, then you have to try a little bit harder. So you do have to spend that extra cash to do that. We literally shot that with my camera guy, our announcement. And it was all because we had a plan in our head as to how we were going to do the announcement. But then when it all came when it came down to it, I flew them down here and we had no plan. And Matt can attest to this. We had no plan until I saw them looking at the logo that I was presenting to them, and I'm like, this is it. This is how we're gonna do the announcement. Or we were looking at my interview with the final goodbye. The final goodbye was supposed to be a standalone video, but at the end of it, I'm like, man, this is a little bit, it's emotional.
Yeah.
So we gotta end it like on a good note. So I'm like, let's just attach the announcement to this, and then we'll do something simple. We didn't spend any crazy amount of money in doing that. We did it all out of here. But obviously, I have the freedom of having like big personalities. Like
let's say
like,
you almost didn't even need to do a big thing because you already have that base.
Yeah.
But if teams like Florida, teams like Minnesota, they've got to do something to like really stand out.
Yeah, teams like Florida. So like I've gotten to know Ben Spoon, the main dude over at in the Florida. So their team. He's really good. He's really good at what he's doing. He just hasn't been a content creator the way that I have that advantage. I set out to be one thing and ended up doing another thing, but I never lost my passion, which is content creation. But at the same time, it doesn't help. It doesn't hurt to ask for help in certain situations where you're not, where your strength doesn't suit that specific thing. But for the most part, I mean, again, we're all tied to this one thing together. So, it's time to help each other out, and I've done that. So like I haven't done that yet, but I've talked to Hasser, I've talked to other team owners, and I'm like, yo, next time, like my full plan is to do an eavesdrop with every single one of the owners in the league. You know what I'm saying? Like to have this conversation about what's been up, right? Just to sort of spread the wealth, if you may, a little bit, because it's
you'll mutually benefit from increasing their profile ultimately.
You can find 10 different interviews where I said if everybody in Call of Duty took the time to create content and just work their asses off until they develop a fan base, we would have the biggest esport in the world. If there was 2 more at the time optics and 2 more at the time phases, who has a bigger fan base than that? Like nobody in esports, you know?
But guess how many CDL teams came to Decerto beforehand, the biggest esports website in the world, and told them about their announcements? 0.
No.
I wonder if that was policy. But
the biggest Call of Duty one by a landmark as well. But why mention it?
Well,
why not get that free PR?
They want to own the media themselves. They want to own the announcement themselves. But the reality is,
you give me a heads up on yours. So 1 actually.
Yeah, but
you know what I mean?
They want to
now that.
No, but it's fine. Just give me an embargo time, and we'll adhere to it.
But we're an amplification or a distribution of it. We don't have to take the exclusive.
No,
basically, you line it up. So they do the announcement.
Yeah,
they have all the
exactly.
glory.
I'm not saying exclusive. I'm saying,
and then we blow it up. Afterwards.
I'm saying, we want content. Why aren't these teams who want exposure coming to us and saying, what can we do? It's just mad to me. I think it's crazy.
On that point and on the business of Decerto, I'm no longer a shareholder in the company. That's been like a month and a half too. Thank you.
Yeah.
Turned out well for me.
It was a wild ride.
Thank you. Turned out well for me. But, in that regard, that affected you guys a lot as much as it affected me, because I would have utilized the outlet. Obviously, obviously I would have given you guys exclusive. Obviously I would have given you as much, be a friend of, whatever. But at times I couldn't tell you guys anything because it would be a massive sort of conflict of interest where I'm feeding you guys and, constantly. So we would talk about it, but you guys would never publish, right?
Yeah, that's one thing we always tried to maintain, is that we weren't going to be it wasn't that kind of relationship where it was just because you're a shareholder, then you'd give us information. That was never the case.
You were never having a influence over our editorial.
Yeah, I think that's what people got messed up.
That idea snowballed badly. And
there was no way you were ever going to be on time to tell us what to do. So,
guys made an announcement 3 weeks ago. It really did snowball that. And I think from the original announcement, at no point did we say Hecz has taken over ownership, but it was almost like Chinese whispers, and by the end, it was made out like you were some dark overlord, like just at the puppet.
Even some other, like when you were Optic, some prominent other esports owners actually got annoyed with me and Decerto.
Who I love. I love. One of my closest
now.
He doesn't really hate us anymore. He doesn't. No, but the point is, he got upset that we were writing so much about Optic, and someone did a stat on the Reddit where it was like 17% of all articles we published were about Optic, right? Which, to be fair, they were, but we were writing about Call of Duty and Optic won champs, so of course there's going to be a huge amount.
In soccer, most people write about Man City, at Man United.
Yeah,
of course. You're going to write about
earlier today, I was at Scumpy's house. Literally, I'm late because I was doing the Scumpy thing, and I'm like, yo, I'm gonna go do the interview, the podcast with Decerto, they're like, all right, yo, you got to tell them to pay me. And I'm like, why? He's like, well, because I say something and 6 hours later is there. I'm like, Seth, they're not posting that because you're super interesting or you're super handsome. You get the views. Do you think that I put you in my thumbnails because you're cute? No, I want that extra 10,000 views that you bring when I put you.
It's also exposure for him as well. I don't understand how he doesn't get that.
Yeah. So
also, it's quicker than 6 hours. Give us some credit.
Yeah, quicker than 6 hours. But anyway, it's like this thing where in the internet, like especially in the where we live right now, it's all about that engagement. It's all about, there's so much noise out there that the only way for you to truly stand out is to do everything right.
Yeah.
The 3 games on YouTube, right? There's 3 games that you're playing. Your title, all right? You gotta create a title or clickbait good enough to where it's gonna make it for somebody to click on it. And if you miss on your first game, guess what? There's number 2. Number 2 is your thumbnail. Your thumbnail, for those who can't read fast enough, has to make somebody click if they're not going to read the title. And third and lastly, the most important one is the content that you create. Is it going to be entertaining enough for people to come back, come back, right? If you're choosing as a content creator, if you're choosing to take the high road and not sort of twist the way that you can say something, like I could have easily said, rearranging Scump's room. No, but we said Scumpy's gaming room tour. Yeah, that sounds a little bit better. Is it clickbaity? Yes, but is it like fake or something?
Still factual.
It's still factual, right?
Yeah,
it's how you position the story. For example, Vision. Vision was a reality TV show, right? But in some occasions, we presented the reality a different way. We said, instead of saying it like this, we're going to say it like this to make it entertaining. It would have been really easy for me to be like, all right, Shazam, we're going to do a segment where we introduce you. And I'm like, no, what we're going to do is you're going to come and knock on the door and say, I heard you guys were looking for a CSGO team. We're barely going to be able to see you. We're going to close the door, and that's that. That's a little bit, it's the truth. We're not acting.
There's no way he actually turned up just there and then on camera. But
I assume you want to talk about clickbait, right? So there's 2 different types of clickbait, and this is what people...
the title of the podcast is the science of clickbait.
The science of clickbait, right? But there's two different clickbaits. There's a clickbait where the title, which I define as clickbait anyway, the title is misleading, so it says something, but when you actually find out... So Casey Neistat used to do it with his YouTube channel. He'd be like... arrested by the police, but actually it was just a police car went past in the background or something like that. But with Decerto, or in clickbait in general, there's 2 different types. You've got ones that's misleading, but then you've got ones which I call it, which is leading, which is basically you provide enough information to think, right, I want to find out more about this, and then you click in. That's the difference. And people are obsessed with calling it clickbait, like it's a negative thing. But if I present something and say, Hector said this about Scump, if you don't want to know what Hector said about Scump, then don't click it. It's not like, you know what I mean? It's not like me saying Hector said something about Scump and you go in and you're actually talking about Formal. Like, you know, that's what people don't understand.
It's not a lie.
No. Yeah, exactly. That's what people don't understand.
Yeah. It's but clickbait has changed. Obviously, people use it when they get hooked into something. They want to complain about it, right?
Yep.
It's not clickbait. They chose to make the decision to click on that. Now, if they go in there and, as Mike said, you're talking about Scum, but it's actually Formal. That is clickbait. I would be annoyed at that. Yep. But the reality is that anything that we do, and a lot of other publications which get the same kind of, let's call it backlash, they're not misleading people. People are just looking to complain about anything. You know what? And even myself, sometimes when I'm reading my favorite soccer publications, I don't know what it is, but being the internet, I find myself reading something. I'm like, how dare this person write it like this? I'm like, hang on a minute, I'm just sounding like one of those idiots on social media. But it is something about the internet where it makes you feel like you own the journalist, or you own the piece, you own the media, and you don't. The reality is that you want to read what you want to read, and you don't like it, and it's human nature not to like it when something goes against their opinion you've held for so long. That's why people reject it like that.
It's not just that. I think people as well, they want it in such a lazy way. Like they want this person, this journalist who's doing this for a living. They've gone through the effort to comb through these videos to find what's been said, or something like that. It's not just something that's been slapped onto them, but they want it in like a tweet so they can just look at it for 1 second, and only they can access it if they're at that exact point. They don't realize that this website is a store for things, so a wider audience can access it when they want to access it, as Mike alluded to earlier in the podcast. Not everyone sees everything on Twitter at the same time. Was that in this podcast?
No,
or was that in a meeting? I was in a meeting, but not everyone sees the same as what you see on Twitter. It depends on when you access it. Depends on who you follow.
Something about Scump and they'll go, well, I could just read his timeline. Well, yeah, you could, but do you know how many people are actually reading this that don't actually already follow Scump? you know what I mean? The amount of people that read the articles and the amount of people that also religiously go through social media, you know what I mean? Decerto and the content that we produce a lot of the time is basically just filtering all of the noise on the internet and putting it into an article and giving some understanding and backstory.
Absolutely.
So if there's a clip that's only 30 seconds long, or there's only a tweet, but that tweet might not make sense to someone unless they're provided with the backstory and understanding of how it came to be. And that's what I teach. That's what I'm always preaching to all of my writers, is you're basically trying to cater to both the the expert audience, but you're also catering to people that don't really understand, that you're catering to the casual. So you've got to write an article for people who know everything and people who don't know anything, and that's why it gets a bit annoying.
Makes esports accessible. That's why esports
exactly, and that's
precisely because of
you
that.
see on Twitter.
Get rid of a jargon.
This no doubt this will mean I get a lot more of these comments, right? But the thing that pisses me off the most is when people go slow news day, and I'm like, slow news day? Do you think we're writing about it?
This is going to be the biggest piece.
Do you think we're writing about it because?
Yeah,
it's a slow news day. No, we're writing about it because we know that that's what gets views. We've got data. We've looked at the data. We understand how it works. We understand what people are going to read. And yes, it might not be your cup of tea, individual person sat on Twitter that probably knows everything about that individual. Yeah. But for everyone else, for the wider audience, they don't know. Yeah, and that's what slow news day is. Just some people. I've even seen someone, an influencer, and we wrote about him. I think it's Aris or Avoid the Puddle or something. He's a streamer, and he actually slow news dayed his own article that was actually promoting him, and it's like, you are nuts. Like,
for the record, none of you know anything about how views are generated.
Yeah, exactly.
At all. and when we write, sometimes we don't write. We choose when or when not to write a lot of news because we understand when is the time to write a lot and when is the time to slow down. You haven't got a clue, and it's taken us 4 years to get to this point.
And if you do have a clue, why not set up a rival website and prove us wrong?
No, not just that. Come and work for us.
Come work for us.
Come work for us straight away. You'll do very well here.
Yeah, I don't know. I've had this conversation with several people because, I understand what it's like to be, to hear the squeaky wheel just like constantly there, and you try to make it not a. I mean, now I think I've done a really good job of just like not even like
Numb it out like a Decerto ad.
Yeah, no, that's just, yeah. So situations like that, like for example, I knew that when I released our branding, some were not gonna like it. Yeah. So I stayed for 3 days. Matt, how long did I stay?
Mission accomplished, though. By the way, the fact that you got people on either side debating it. No one else debated any of it, or hardly in comparison to Huntsmen. You know what I mean? So
exactly. I literally said, I'm like, and then Andy's like, ooh, hey man, some people. I'm like, do not. I stopped everybody and I put it in the text. I'll show you the text. I put it in the text. I'm like, don't ever tell me what the public is telling me about a certain thing, positive or negative. When we make an announcement, I just let it sit there, because how they feel right now at the drop of whatever news it is that we're doing, it is what it is. It's an experience that they're going to get to experience, right? So whether they like it or don't like it, that's one thing. I knew that my logo was going to be a little bit like, for some people, but a lot of people were going to fucking dig it. And when it came down to it, I looked at it and I'm like, okay, the Optic Gaming logo was literally an O and a G.
Yeah, it's not insane, is it?
We made it special.
Exactly. It's what it represents.
A good logo, though. Right. It's what it represents, but it's also like, your creation. It's something you've created.
Yeah.
Like,
so
I just don't understand why people get so bothered about logos.
Yeah, that, and then we saw like, I'm gonna say it. Okay, I'm gonna say it. We sold like $250,000 worth of never before seen hoodies, ever, in 24 hours. Okay, so when I'm getting somebody saying it's like that logo sucks, and then I'm looking at the sales that we're creating, I'm like, we developed something. We developed such a relationship with people that they're gonna jive with us no matter what it is. And I know that the logo's good. I've been a graffiti writer for as long as I can. I've been a creative person for as long as I can. And if I would have thought that logo was just like not even at a 90 percentile in the what people might or might not like, I would not have released it. You know what I'm saying? And it was the first time that I was able to do to sort of put together a well put graphic, aesthetically pleasing to the eye.
But you know what I saw as well is with the logo, right? Fair enough, it might not be everyone's cup of tea in exactly the shape of the crest and how it's located. But then, for example, you put it on that white hoodie that I think Seth tweeted out and you showed me it beforehand. That actually then changes the whole look of it, and it's like, and then people are like, "Oh, I didn't like the logo, but this is fire," and it's like, that's exactly the point, you idiot. Like, you're gonna like it in different scenarios because it's just taste. That's how it works. You can't like it all the time.
Here's a question. Obviously, with all these sales, you must have a lot of data. Was there more people in the Chicago area that were buying it No, or is it just it's widespread?
Yeah, we put a heat map on the. Well, somebody gave us the heat map.
I did see I saw it with the dots basically. Yeah,
but that
so
was for sales. Yeah,
right.
For sales of tickets, not our.
Right. Okay.
If I look at this, it came from everywhere. Australia, huge. So it went United States and Canada. Let's call it North America. North America number 1, England number 2. France number 3, Australia number 4.
Right. Okay.
So and that's a lot. Shout out to my Australian people. I wish you guys were closer. I would visit more. But it's one of those things where
it's about, mate.
Yeah, huh?
We'll be checking in on that just so you know.
Yeah, good.
Well, wishing them closer. We're going to move them closer first. Then.
Nah, the thing is this: it's like it's the internet. It's not. You're global. If you're on the internet, you're global. You're accessible to everyone at any time.
But I guess, the reason I ask that is because obviously one of the goals of the Call of Duty League is to have a more focused fan base, or at least develop that local loyalty more. And I was wondering if you'd kind of already attained that, being from Chicago or living most of your life in Chicago. If that already resonated with the local fans more, or if that's something that you're just gonna have to build.
I don't know. I never really thought about it like that. I didn't go into, when I saw Chicago, I was just like, Chicago was my second option, by the way, right? My first option was Las Vegas, but that wasn't available to be picked up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
My first show, I don't know why, it was just whatever, but my first choice was Las Vegas.
Right.
And then
what was the rationale behind Vegas?
I wanted to be a casino owner at some point.
I could see you being.
You just want to go to Vegas for an excuse.
Well, no, I'm not a big Vegas guy, but the most simplistic term that you can think about is like you build a stadium, and then you need a hotel on top of the stadium, and every hotel in Vegas has a casino.
With Vegas as well, the interesting thing about that is that it's not a city of people that really live there. It's a city of people that travel in.
Yeah,
so
true.
Especially your brand, you don't. Obviously, you're going to have people in the Chicago area, but I reckon you'll have an even distribution of fans across the entire world because it's you and you're already known. Whereas other teams need to build on that kind of relationship.
Yeah, and it takes work. It's not just showing up and playing a tournament and saying, "Hey, my city won," right? Like it's about knowing who is playing for you and representing what you're about. Like 100%, city, no city,
100%.
Yeah, city, no city. It represents a little bit something more than just like a championship. In my opinion.
Yeah.
When you see people in France wearing a LeBron James jersey, it's not because of Cleveland. It's not because of Miami, and it's certainly not because of the Lakers. It's because of that person, and that's what we always develop. If you look at Wu-Tang, no, I'm kidding, but that's pretty much what it is. I wanted to create something that had a bunch of personalities on there, that those personalities were big, whether or not they were part of a team.
Yeah,
and it's worked so far. Period. So, tell me about the about the numbers. Tell me about the Decerto numbers.
We can reveal that we're on because this is all public. So it's 17 million uniques. Or it will be 17 million uniques by the end of this month. We've had like 3 back-to-back months in terms of uniques on the website.
Damn.
Social footprint is a lot bigger than people would think. We've got like 5.5 million followers, but we have it over different dedicated accounts. Yeah. Some you may be familiar with, others you may not be that much more familiar with and whatnot. So
we've got a few accounts that we don't like. We obviously own them. Stuff like Facebook accounts, they've got huge followers, but it doesn't say it's Decerto on it, for example.
Well,
some of them do.
In the interest of branding, and given part of this conversation was about branding, there is a phasing process because everything has to come back to Decerto. You know what I mean? And even to the Charlie Intel fans and Fortnite Intel fans and over there, everything has to come back to Decerto whether you like it or not, because that's ultimately what's most recognizable about this company. That is the mothership at the end of the day.
So we've got. We've opened.
Do you want to say we had a record day as well?
We had a record day. We had 1.3.
About 1.5 million page views for one day on one website, Decerto.com only. People forget we have Decerto.fr.es as well. Yeah, more websites coming soon
for France, Spanish.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then we've got other regions that we're going to be opening soon as well. So they'll be pretty exciting. Yeah, and then in terms of like the size of the company, obviously it started just us 3, and then Nico sat over there. He's Belgian, so that's why I didn't come on, because he wouldn't understand him.
He wouldn't understand us. That
he wouldn't understand us. That would be the issue.
And he also has a poor concentration span, so he'd just be like looking off.
I literally said that I stop the podcast if you interacted with whatever.
But we've got an office in London now on Camden High Street. We've got content teams in the US, Australia, obviously the UK, all around Europe, and we're about to hire more staff in a couple of other regions. I mean, I can't even remember what the staff total we're at now. So
we're at about 75. I think
75
we've got staff in
so
8 different countries at the
people
moment.
still think that I write all of the articles. So like, I'll get tweets.
He won the award, and he didn't write one article.
There's a period where Zuma kept referring to Mike as Decerto. He thought that was his gaming alias.
At the time, I was to be fair to him, at the time I was the only person posting. But
no, you weren't. No,
you
were on vacation. He wasn't doing anything.
Back then it was like me and Joe. It was like me and Joe. But anyway, yeah. So we've got a lot of staff members. We're growing rapidly. We're building out a whole video team. A lot of people think, Decerto's just these clickbait articles. When actually, we've been on site at we've got on site this weekend at DreamHack Atlanta.
Yeah, we're doing 3 tournaments. One of our coverage is sponsored by Elgato, another sponsored by Hi-Res, another sponsored by Chipotle. So very familiar. So we're doing a lot of stuff.
We go to all these events. We get
more than anyone.
More than anyone.
We're invited to 40 events per year to go and cover. We'd love to do more. We also, we've been doing a ton of original documentary.
Very good too.
And
we did one on Hungry
mine
Box
was really nice.
But yeah, that's looking at
No, but
he's my sponsor.
So exactly, that was a good one. And we're just trying to build out and create more content. But what people have to realize is that and where our competitors have always failed is that they just don't write about. They just either try and write exclusive about esports, or that's it. Like you've got to write about all this different area, and you've got to write content that. You've got to write short form, but you also got to write long form. It's got to be like a mix between everything. And I think that's where people are like, for example, with the Esports Awards, for example, if we win, there'll be people like, just clickbait articles, but they'll just not even recognize all the other content that we also create.
The countless big name journalists that write for us, the content, the getting out to the events, as we said, more than anyone, making sure that the audience at home are able to follow the tournament properly.
And when people call us like BuzzFeed or TMZ, it's like, what, you're naming 2 successful companies, that big deal. Especially BuzzFeed. I mean, they created. I'm pretty sure the BuzzFeed concept
won an award, by the way, for a news platform.
They created a concept where it was like, a lot of it's like light, entertaining content, which is a lot of what we produce on Decerto. But then that provided enough money to pay for these big journalists to come in and write for them. And that's the same for us. You can't have your Richard Lewis's, you can't have your Kelsey Moses without having this other content, because that on its own is just not sustainable. Those people writing an article a week or every few days, that is not sustainable on its own. You have to create, I shouldn't really be telling the secrets of Decerto here, but
some of the big outlets found it out, and that's why they collapsed.
Yeah, look at the way that we write content, and it's kind of geared towards people who are young people, and the way it's not too long. It's like 300-400 words most of the time. That is the perfect amount for someone to read. That's the attention span people have. So people can be annoyed about content and be like, short articles or blah blah blah. But it's like, that is what people want to read. We've obviously worked out what people want, so then we're creating it. But we're also trying to then creating this other unique original content on the side of it. And I think that's where people get Decerto wrong, is that they think it's just about one thing, and that's ultimately
well put.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess further to this, most of our traffic actually comes from Google, so it's not like people are getting tricked into.
We obviously get a lot of directs, we get a lot of social, but Google is a big one as well.
20% now. The Holy Grail, if we're going to give all the secrets away here, lads, is direct. You want people going to the website.
You do. Dedicated audience.
Because the reality is Facebook, Google, Twitch, these are all algorithms that can change at any point.
Yeah.
And the more you spread your eggs, the more when one changes, you're okay. You're protected by the others. But there's nothing stopping one day, because advertisers all of a sudden put a stop to promoting for all these channels and say no more. And then all of a sudden you're relying on your direct traffic. So that's the Holy Grail.
Yeah. And that's why we want to get, that's why we're trying to push into YouTube more, create more video content. We'll also put video content on our website. So
it does better on our website. Our video content,
does better on our website.
YouTube,
so we're just trying to make sure we grow sustainably. We're a profitable business. How many teams, how many companies in esports can say that? I probably count on my hand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially the size we are.
Yeah. I'm reconsidering. Stepping away.
See, it's in writing now. So.
I'm not. Obviously, it would have been awesome to continue down the path with you guys. Obviously, good friends, but
we
also...
should have talked about that, because obviously it was important for us, you know what I mean? You were a big name signing for us. Yes, you weren't super hands-on. We didn't want you to be super hands-on. But simply by being in a conversation now and again, by association, it was a major factor in where we are now. And it didn't have to be some kind of boardroom bullshit where every month we're getting together to look up numbers. We want it to be just, this is a relationship. We're friends with Hecz. He supports us by being on the board or as an advisor. That's all we needed. You know what I mean?
So I don't think I don't think, if I was to put a number, I don't think 99% of the population that follows you guys thought at any point that I was like, oh, you should write about Optic. Obviously, everybody knows that I like to keep everything coming out of my channel first, right?
Yeah.
I would never do that, period. I think it was just the 1%. Even with Hasra, right? Like and again, he's a good friend of mine. So don't, if you insult Hasra, you're insulting me because that's my boy. But we are competitors. And when he said, when he's like, well, it's not ethical, or it's not right that you have ownership in a website that writes. I'm like, first of all, we're not there yet. Okay, I'm gonna try to get my hands on as much business as I possibly can, so I can have a successful future. You know what I'm saying? Like it wasn't necessarily about, obviously the major part was the friendship, but I thought, a couple of friends of mine are creating a website. They need my help. I'm gonna lend my name. Of course, I'm gonna do that. I would do that for anybody out there that didn't have a conflicting, business with me, and that at some point or another, I knew that it was gonna give me some money, as it most recently did. Thank you. Which is impressive because you guys don't work.
We're back.
But it is.
Well, the irony is that you didn't do any work and you got paid.
that is ironic. But it is like that. Like in this day and age, if you're trying to make it in the internet, well, in the early stages of this whole thing, this whole internet thing, if you weren't trying to make money and diversifying your efforts in different categories, you were never gonna make it. You can't just show up again, bringing it back. You can't just be a pro player and expect that that's gonna do it for you. No, you have to go out there and get a sponsorship where the sponsorship is actually equity in the company. One of my biggest mistakes in the history of my career in esports was not telling Duncan from Scuff to give me equity in Scuff.
Yeah.
Because I know that we had a lot. I mean, I see the numbers, right? Like I know that we kicked more ass than anybody than any other team out there. Period. People may have been using Aches code or to buy an Optic controller just to be funny because they supported that, but they wanted. I get that, but that's what I'm saying. I know that we sold way more, so that was like one of my biggest mistakes. Put that in the article. I should have had equity in Scuff. Period. You know what I'm saying? And it was no one's fault. He didn't, do anything like, it wasn't that.
No,
it was just me
there's no
asking.
reason why he would come out and do it either.
Yeah, no, it's something.
You wouldn't just give Optic away for nothing.
You learn that as you grow as a business person, like the opportunities that are out there to do that. And we talked about this just recently. Like one of the things that I would have been doing right now to differentiate myself from everybody else. I think one of the places where a lot of these new franchises that may not necessarily have the following. They could have thought differently, and I thought that's where Miami was going when they hired was it Ogre 2?
Yeah,
Tom the GOAT. When they hired him, I thought I'm like okay, fine. They're gonna do the right thing. That in a person in their position, I would have gone and picked up Halo, like the best Halo. I would have picked up that team right there. I would have picked up my old Halo team and made them that, because even if they fail because they were Halo players making the transition. Okay, but that's also interesting. I want to see how these Halo players from another thing are doing in this game. It's controller based, so there would have been an easy transition. I would have gone on and gone completely different enough, and people would have hated that because, oh, you're not supporting the professional players that have been here from the beginning and this, that, and the other. I don't care. I'm in the business of selling tickets.
You don't owe them. No one owes them anything.
I am in the business of selling tickets, and me standing out and being different is what it's going to take, right? Yeah. And unfortunately, like, Halo isn't where it's going to be, and I think that it's going to have another resurgence in the next year or two. You may see the data the way you see it, but the visionary that I am, I see it differently, okay?
I'll be smart.
We'll see.
Yeah. Well, we will.
It'll be on PC.
I think we'd all like it to be that.
Yeah.
I mean, we played a lot of Halo in our days.
Yeah, so it's like it's that simple scenario. Like, you have to present yourself differently. Following the rules and not breaking molds is the surefire way to always be like this.
Yeah.
In this day and age, to go upwards in a very aggressive manner, going from 6 to 12, if you know what I'm saying, is by doing the thing that you're not supposed to, is by going left when everybody is going right.
100%.
Period.
I always say, if you look at, like, anyone's doing anything, or if we ever do anything, I always say to my writers, look, if there's not comments and people pissed off, then it's probably not that exciting. You know what I mean? So it's the same with the thing with your logo, and that's what you're saying with Florida. They should pick up and just completely break the mold. But
The imitation as well is a great compliment. I'm sure a lot of people have followed in your footsteps, and a lot of people are definitely following ours, to put it generously.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
And there's room for everybody. It's the fucking internet. It's not a room that can be contained. It's like you limit 15 capacity, right? It's not that. It's bigger than that, and everybody can reinvent themselves and be whatever the fuck they want. You know what I'm saying? Like think about what people started out doing and what they're doing now. It's insane. Dalmit, for example, is a FaZe Clan member. He used to do sniping videos. Now he's got 10 million subs, fucking exploring under rivers, like in scuba gear. You know what I'm saying? Like it's if you put yourself in this position where it's like, I'm only a goddamn pro player and that's all I'm gonna do, that's fine. But don't be fucking mad when somebody else is getting a contract and you're not getting that same contract, okay? Don't be mad at Censor because he's got a massive popularity off of whatever. You may not respect his skill, even though he's a good player. You may not respect his skill as a player, whatever. But guess what? He doesn't give a shit. He's laughing his way to the bank because he's getting get paid twice. One, for taking your spot, okay? And two, getting your salary. And lastly, his own money because he's a self-sustained entity.
An example of this, and look, he's very successful on his own Merc, right? He always jokingly says, I should have just played Minecraft. You know, like when obviously you guys were playing and he kind of still stepped away from it and wanted to concentrate on COD. That's an example where, like, you know, who's to say Merc couldn't be as big as Nadeshot now?
Yeah, exactly. It's just one of those things that it's there for you to do. You look at it, you see other people doing it, and you're still choosing not to get that money. You're choosing to be where you're at, pissed off at somebody else's success.
Yeah.
That's it. No,
It shouldn't be about the money, though, should it, all the time?
Huh?
Shouldn't always be about the money, should it? That's
it's not. It's often the definition of success.
Yeah. Is it? Or is
think
your
a
own
lot of the time
happiness, your own
The
satisfaction?
only people look.
Once you get to a certain level, it means it doesn't mean anything. But that money is the reason why you can do that thing.
Yeah. The only people that say it's not always about the money are the people that grew up with money. I unfortunately didn't have that upbringing, so it's always about making sure that anybody in my family or my circle is about.
I also think it's often introduced to avoid people being disappointed when we don't make money from something that they love. Yeah, because not everything that you do that you love is going to.
I know. I was explaining that to who was it? So TP just went back to Blackout, right? He's playing Blackout consistently. He sees that as a job, right? And he loves playing the game, so it's a bonus for him. But some people are like, I'm not gonna play this game. Like I had this conversation with Scump like at some point last year. He's like, man, I can't play this game. I'm not gonna stream it if I'm not having fun. And I'm like, yeah, but you have to understand that that's a job. How many people show up to their 8-hour-a-day job and not enjoy it?
Well, you packing boxes. What would you rather do? Pack boxes or play Call of Duty?
My old boss always said, and this is something I've always kind of stuck with, especially when I've been struggling, is successful people do things that unsuccessful people don't want to do. You know, you don't always want to do what you don't always want to do what you want, basically. I've butchered that, absolutely butchered it.
No, it's good.
You're not the most eloquent man, so I think people will allow it.
The point got across. But yeah, anyway, thank you for stopping by, boys. I do appreciate you guys coming by. First time here. And I'm sure it won't be the last. I always have a blast having a conversation with you guys, which is why I get mad when you guys don't do your podcast, because I know you guys aren't doing shit.
We'll get you on our next one when we relaunch it.
Yeah, because you guys are definitely not doing something else. You know what I'm saying? Watching TV, Netflix. Literally could just sit for an hour.
Not watching Eavesdrop, though.
Definitely watching the Eavesdrop. Yeah. Thank you, by the way. I appreciate the views that I get off of that. It's always
we write about it, and we don't write about it because you're our friend. It's because people want to read about it.
Yeah.
Science.
Because you guys are friends with a whole bunch of other people. How come they're not? Anyway, doesn't matter. Huge, again, thank you for stopping by. And one last shout out to our sponsor this week, which is, of course, the interesting Escape the Invasion. So shout out to them for coming. Hopefully you guys come back and appreciate it. Chris, Josh, Mike, thank you for stopping by. We'll see you guys on the next one.
Thank you.